I'm a man who believed that I died 20 years ago, and I live like a man who is dead already. I have no fear whatsoever of anybody or anything.
Gary Webb. I am an investigative journalist, and in 1996 I wrote a series of stories entitled Dark Alliance, which was about CIA involvement in drug trafficking.
I knew a man who once said death smiles at us all. All a man can do is smile back.
We've both been skull and bone, the secret society.
It's so secret we can't talk about it.
What does that mean for America? The conspiracy theorists are going to go on.
I'm sure they are. I don't know. I haven't seen the red
Number 322.
I sad duty to report this afternoon that my friend and colleague, Tim Russell, collapsed and died early this afternoon.
I may die in this cell tonight or in the arena tomorrow. I am a slave. What possible difference can I make?
And no official of my administration, whether his rank is high or low, civilian or military, should interpret my words here tonight as an excuse to censor the news, to stifle dissent, to cover up our mistakes, or to withhold from the press and the public the facts they deserve to know.
What the fuck is up? Welcome to another Already Dead, your favorite weekly conspiracy call-in variety show. We're calling it conspiracy this week as opposed to parapolitical because we're a little more dressed down. We're on the more conspiracy side. We kind of straddle the line, and I don't know, just depending on the week, we'll go with one or the other, whichever rolls off the tongue. But yeah, we're joined by Raven today, me and Austin. What's up, my friend? It's you're my body double on Tower Gang. That seems to be the going trend. Anytime I'm have family commitments, I go, yo, call in Raven. What's up, dude? Glad to have you here.
Yeah, man, I answer the sort of the Raven signal, right, instead of the bat signal. But I feel like this is kind of a long time coming. I'm glad that you guys were able to make it happen. We were gonna do a show a long time ago, and then I ended up murdering the show that I used to do, the Ravens Watch, and so we still have to run it back sometime. We have to do a sort of a Nephilim Death Squad, Already Dead crossover.
That would be badass.
One of these days we have to get around to that. But yeah, thanks for having me, man. I'm Raven, one half of Nephilim Death Squad and host of Timeline Cleanse. And I guess, occasional fill-in for Tower Gang.
Yeah, I agree with the crossover idea, but I think it needs to be kind of like the Marvel movies phase build up where, like, say we have this, so we've had you on, we'll have Top on at some point, maybe a month from now or something like that. And at some point I come on, some point Austin, and then they're like, whoa, what the fuck? I didn't think they'd actually do all of them. And they're like, oh shit, all fucking Infinity Stones? You're kidding me. I thought you were just tugging my chain. No fucking way.
Do you remember when they eventually rolled in Spider-Man and like nobody knew they were actually going to do Spider-Man? That'll be Toad. We'll bring in Toad.
Yeah.
I know nobody's really looking for Toad like they were looking for Spider-Man, but we'll do that anyway, just for the people.
That's great, man.
It is funny how there is this like going concept in the podcast world to try to do super podcasts or some shit, but they never seem to really. I don't know. Tower Gang's one of the rare occasions. I guess it's like if you don't try to do serious, you can make it work. I don't know.
Right. Well, I mean, you have the Union of the Unwanted Guys, which, like, look, I'm going to be straight up with you. The Union of the Unwanted Guys, every single one of them is fantastic individually. As soon as you get them together, I think it is what you're talking about, trying to unpack a serious topic. If you want to talk about dicks and, you know, shit like that, that works out really well. But if you want to talk about, you know, something complicated, the Oklahoma City bombing or, you know, the story of the fallen after they were cast out by God down to that's never going to happen on Union of the Unwanted. And so, yeah, I do see this. There's often an attempt at a conglomerate, and then it just never really sticks. Although they're probably the best example of it.
I will say, man, like I honestly love what you and Top have been doing for a while, dude. And I think right after the Trump assassination attempt, you two kind of embodied my personal reaction to it all from basically the moment it took place. And so I felt just like it made me feel so good to not be as you know what I mean, like
Yeah,
I'm so
yeah.
fucking lonely in these thoughts, and also to just have like a legitimate like somebody who knows how to kind of make a legitimate argument, like out there kind of pushing forward, at least pushing the idea, hey guys, like we should at least question this narrative to a certain extent and remain skeptical, right? And so seeing you guys get to go on TFH just to talk about that, I thought was like valuable as hell. And especially in just the reaction phase of it all, because everyone was so fucking, you know, first of all, over emotional and just extremely reactive when it came to clearly anyone who leaned right to any extent when it comes to Trump, or was really, I think that kind of is the category of people who are so desperate for like they're trying to fill that God hole, right? And so it kind of seems like Trump is really fitting that role for them. You know what I mean? I think it's a predestined outcome in many ways. I think it's been a manufactured thing. But yeah, I just have to say, dude, like I really do admire what you guys are doing, because I think it's absolutely valuable to be in the moment when you're going to have to take the bullets, right? For being willing to at least like remain skeptical and float out ideas as just potential possibilities. And yeah, so seeing you go on and talk a little bit of sense into Sam, even though, you know, Sam has like, he had decent instincts when it comes to it, but I was still just like, so many people who have such large platforms and so much influence that they can wield, whether they know it or not, you know, in many ways. Yeah, it just kind of like, I think it's very important to not fall into the trap. And so, yeah, I just want to say, man, like, it's great. I fucking love it.
I appreciate
and I'm a fan.
that. I think that a lot of people, that moment, whatever you make of it, certainly galvanized his, I guess if you want to call it, fan base, right? And there was a lot of how dare yous in that moment.
Yeah.
Do you remember during COVID when, and I know we're on YouTube, so I won't get too crazy with it, but it was just a lot of this appeal to emotion, right? What about your grandparents? You know, things of that nature. It was like you're thinking of nobody but yourself. It was this exploitation of your desire to not be selfish. And when it came to the Trump assassination attempt, or what we saw on the world stage play out there, a lot of that same appeal to emotion was going on, especially when it came to the unfortunate death of the guy who was in the audience behind him, the guy whose name they spelled wrong on the jacket at the RNC. It was very strange. And that guy, who obviously did die, and we'll get to the strawmans of this argument in a moment, because he's part of the strawmans that are often tossed in our faces. But that guy was leveraged as the emotional crowbar. It was like, are you saying, and this is where the strawmans really come in, are you saying that guy didn't die? Because I'm pretty sure I saw a guy die. And it's like, well, no, I'm not saying that guy.
I'm just saying, theoretically, maybe they shot him to get this response that you're giving right now.
100%, brother.
Exactly.
They do it all the fucking time.
My favorite
He literally
one was,
said that. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Well, my favorite one was, are you saying that he would risk getting shot at so that he could turn his head at the Good God. Who is saying that? Who is saying that? That's out of control, dude. I'm not saying that Trump is Neo from the Matrix. He's not dodging bullets. I'm saying, can you explore for even a moment that, like, maybe he wasn't shot at? And so really what we were doing when that first happened, and there was a lot of, you used the expression taking bullets before, which I think is apt in this particular case, but we were amongst the first of conspiracy theorists to say, like, hey, maybe just pump the brakes. Yeah. Maybe wait for these details to settle. Maybe don't fall into the "this is my guy" camp. How dare you? And maybe don't forget for a second that government figures, political actors on the world stage have done grotesque things to further whatever agenda it is that they have,
Oh,
and
brother.
that this is kind of minor in comparison to a lot of things that we've seen. We did all just live through, COVID. Top outlined this fantastically, I thought, on Tinfoil Hat. It was like, there's a guy in a rubber mask who's pretending to be the president in Joe Biden. He's got a different face every 2 weeks. The other day he was, 7 feet tall. We just went through a worldwide pandemic where they shut down the entire country. We've been falsely, entering wars under false pretenses over and over again throughout the generations. 9/11. Do I have to say 9/11? It's just, it's very clear that they are willing to do wild things. If you think that killing a man in the audience behind Trump isn't on that list, then I got news for you. You're not a critical thinker. You're just locked into the my guy paradigm.
Yeah, I mean, like
100%.
all these major deep events are always like, whether intentional or not, when you get to the root of it, it is like it shakes you to your core, and that's the thing, because it's like a big moment. So it's supposed to be like, how do we react? What are the immediately hot button things? So it's like almost like the concept of like a dialectic, like we're driving you this way. So I mean, it's not that crazy. Like you're like, oh my god, that'd be so ludicrous. It'd be like, yeah, that's kind of the fucking point. Like if the more ludicrous it is, the more it's like, whoa. There's no way they'd do that. And you're like, well, I don't fucking know. They've done some pretty crazy shit. So now I do have my doubts of whether they have the capability of like pulling that off or the balls to do that, because it'd be sloppy. But it is like, I don't doubt that they might. And it's something I always keep open of, like, because their whole thing is fucking is fucking like a misdirection. Like I always bring up the example of RFK, and that like the idea is you had Sirhan, who clearly went through some sort of MK Ultra type shit, was shooting wildly towards him, but the fucking autopsy showed that the bullet came from the back and was close range. Yeah. So it was likely
Eugene Cesar.
Yeah, there you go, that guy, and it was him that came up behind him.
Security guard at the Ambassador Hotel. Yeah, 100%, man.
Yeah, which is, so it's like that was like a magic trick right there. It's like the idea of like we're making you look over at Sirhan over here while getting popped over here.
Misdirection, no doubt. But then you have this occult aspect to it all, and I was going to ask you this too, because I was really kind of dragged kicking and screaming into researching the occult. I'll be entirely honest, and mainly it was because of how often this thread I would just discover it over and over in every single aspect of investigating some sort of intelligence, covert, clandestine operation of some kind, or allegedly a cult right after the Warren Commission report comes out and MK Ultra was driven underground into, private cult groups and, and private intelligence networks and all of these things. And then you have Sirhan with all these Amorc Rosicrucian connections. He's hanging out with a guy that is a member of the Process Church of the Final Judgment, and he's at a fucking party at Sharon Tate's house thrown by members of the Process Church. Like, that shit blew my mind when I found that out just recently. But why would it though at this point? You know what I mean? It's like, I'm so shocked every fucking week, but it's like I continue to stumble into like some just new extraordinary revelation that seems to have gone entirely unnoticed by the vast majority of people. And we're the only schizos willing to mention it or, put our credibility at risk for even considering it. So anyway,
well,
yeah.
No, I mean, it's a great point, because I think that you tackle a lot more of the, what was the expression used? Parapolitical?
Parapolitical.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And on Nephilim Death Squad, we deal much more in the conspiratorial, but also spiritual realm. And I had found that to be the most compelling. We get accused of a lot of things, Top and I, because we drag people on the internet quite often. And
bro, that video of Dave and Robbie, I was fucking dying. They're using Top as an example.
It's fantastic. Well, I mean, it's a good. I ask him all the time. I'm like, "Are you sure, dude?" But when I was younger, what I was gonna say is that people accuse us of being grifters, and because they think that the reason the show is risen in popularity so rapidly is because we're taking advantage of Christians, essentially, which couldn't be further from the truth, because in order for you to grift, you have to be doing something for the sake of the money and not for the sake of the interest. And when I tell you guys, like, I'm obsessed with this and have been obsessed with this since I was 16 years old, this is not a grift. This is my genuine interest. It actually took me a long time to ever even get on a mic and talk about these things, because I like to think that I'm enough of a critical thinker that I just wasn't sure. For the longest time, I'm like, am I equipped to go out and start claiming that there's really something here? And it was so much second guessing. But when I was a kid, you say that you keep tugging on these parapolitical lines and they end up becoming occult lines, more or less, right?
Yep.
When I was a kid, the first thing I noticed was the occult lines. I know, basically, I just noticed the repetition of symbolism, whether that symbolism be ingrained in Hollywood or in the music industry. Probably best exemplified, honestly, in the music industry, especially when we were younger. I imagine you guys are probably close to my age. I'm 34. And when we were younger, our genre of hip hop, it was like rock and roll passed the satanic baton to the hip hop industry. And
3 6 Mafia.
Yes. And
yeah,
so
100%, dude. Yeah.
these hip hop moguls all of a sudden started to display, what was sort of probably inaccurately described as like Illuminati symbolism, especially when you think about like Tupac, Illuminati, that whole thing. And it was interesting because the crowd that they were aiming at certainly wasn't equipped yet to have that conversation. You're talking to, if I'm going to be honest, it's like hip hop is aimed predominantly at low income areas. These people are not rolling around with, books from Albert Pike or any kind of real grasp on the occult. And yet the people that they idolize the most are saturating their music videos, in particular their music videos, in this sort of symbolism. That was the first thing that I noticed. And what ended up happening was you always kind of get this retort when it comes to the rebuttal you'll get when you say, hey, what about isn't it weird that there's like goat heads and pentagrams and all-seeing eyes? That was the real rudimentary stuff, right? And people would go, no, dude, that's just, they're creating, yeah, sure, it's there, but they're creating a sort of mystique around their brand, and they're appealing to a different fan base. But what I began to notice was that, like, this fan base that they're appealing to, I'm the only one that seems to notice. And that's, hyperbolic. This is before the internet was as big as it is. I didn't have a community. So if you were a conspiracy theorist in 2006, you were probably the only one amongst your homies, right?
Lonely.
So literally, I'm like, oh, so Jay-Z is displaying all this esoteric symbolism for me because I'm where the money is and he wants to attract me. And so that was kind of the beginning of it. And honestly, ever since then, I took a different route where it was like, I'm following the occult, and the occult repeatedly ties into politics. That's where things started getting really strange. So I just find it fascinating. You guys are sniffing from one direction. I'm sniffing from another one, but we're coming to the same conclusions.
100%.
And it's that these things are intrinsically married to one another.
Yeah, we're both scratching at the veil, but from different sides of it. I feel like you guys are like, because we scratch up the veil. It's kind of like we're showing you all that can be seen on like I guess almost like the cave metaphor of like what you can see, and then you guys are like what could be.
Honestly, I think that's a great
like you're
way.
Coming at it from the other side of the veil.
Yeah, I think that's a great way of describing it, because a lot of what we deal with is the intangible. But the thing about it is like, so for those of you that don't know, really for the audience's sake, we do a show called Nephilim Death Squad, and the premise is that there is a lot more information in the Bible than what current day Christianity has allowed Christians to believe. In many ways, go ahead.
It's been like a thwarted, misdirected interpretation, largely like with a lot of malicious intent behind it, I would imagine, to like, at least that's what it seems like. And especially when you have this distortion of biblical prophecy that at least what I kind of see it as. And that's just how I see it kind of like wielded, like used and utilized against us in many ways, as far as like in, let's say, to heighten tensions for manufacturing consent for some foreign conflict, like what's happening in Israel. Like, it's perfect, right? And so, I'm just agreeing.
No,
wholeheartedly.
You're right on, though. It's like a lot of what the Bible has been reduced to is a mechanism by which the world's superpowers control the people, and also I sometimes suspect one that they will manufacture end times prophecy with. And by that I mean, like, you know, let's just say for the layman, when it comes to prophecy, there will be a flood, there will be a famine, there will be a war, there will be X, Y, and Z. I do believe that the elites, the proverbial they, right, what a lot of them are trying to do is, you look at these things, you go, well, a famine. And then what do you look over and see? You see warehouses that are, you know, food production plants burning down. You see farmers being asked to cull their herds. You see the outbursts of bird flu, and then suddenly the culling of millions of chickens. There seems to be a constant jab happening
The
to
food, dude, that falls perfectly in line with whatever you want to call it, the Great Reset, Operation Lockstep, you know, the report from Iron Mountain. I mean, like, honestly, how many different ways do you need it rebranded before you accept it and embrace it as the future, you know, of our dystopian reality? And honestly, it really seems that way, because when you have not only Event 201 prior to COVID, which that was really, brother, that is mainly probably the reason I started a podcast, right? Going through all of that. I had just recently moved to California. Just, you know, clearly I have
That's
different
a bad timing.
Yeah, fuck, bro. It was like 2017 when we moved.
Oh,
and yeah,
man.
fucked up, bro. And so we're in.
Are you still out there?
Yeah, right now I'm in Long Beach.
Oof.
But yeah.
Guys, go support his Patreon.
Right.
Support me, please.
Get
please.
him out of there. Come to Florida,
I'm
dude.
desperate.
Florida's much better. You can have guns.
100%. But we're up in Palmdale at that time, because just to make kind of like the financial transition right to the state economy, we had to get this piece of shit apartment in basically on the threshold of hell in the high desert, you know, an hour and something out of like actually being in you know, the basin of Los Angeles. And so you'd have to drive a fucking hour before you could do anything. And that's not even counting traffic. So it was just a lot to commute to do anything, that type of thing. But anyway,
by the time you get settled,
dude,
COVID kicks your door in. You're in one of the worst areas too when it comes to the lockdowns and not even just the lockdowns, but the sort of the propaganda surrounding it. And, the way that people were whipped up into a fervor.
100%. And so that did make me feel very isolated during that time, I will be honest. But also it was such a kind of a culture shock for me personally, because I come from like Northwest Arkansas, real rural area, grew up on a 35-acre farm. You know, my mom was a horse trainer. My dad's like a truck driver, you know, and so it was but of course they're from out here, but it was a different time, you know, and they left for a reason, you know what I mean? But I find it interesting because when I moved, man, there was like this gentrification pipeline to the prison from South Central Los Angeles for like 20 plus years. It had been going on. And so the crime rate in that area was just one of the worst in the country. And so I'm working at like managing this shitty store and dealing with the most insane amount of theft you could ever imagine in your life.
Yeah.
And I'm like, just based on principle, I'm like,
it's called reparations, but please go ahead.
Dude, just based on principle, I'm like reprimanding mothers with their children who they're using to steal shit. Dude, it was so frustrating. Oh my God. But anyway,
Yeah. Seriousness, you need to come down to Florida. This is
I'm telling you, brother.
I don't know what your personal position is. Like your personal position is at the time, but it's like this is becoming the hub.
It genuinely is.
I agree.
Because you got Elijah down here. You got
this
fucking
is temporary, brother.
Luke down here, Clint down here in this area.
Everybody's down here. We're looking to do something. We're constantly, Top and I are constantly like racking our brains. Like, what can we do? There's something to be done here.
That's
we were just over at Elijah's place. His studio is incredible. Yeah, Florida is the place. I can't believe. Well, I mean, it's not like you could just get up and leave, but do you have any plans to get the hell out of there?
Yeah, we have a plan for sure. Yeah. We're getting much more serious about it. Much like as far as just recently, we've been getting a lot more serious about.
You have kids?
No, we're right now.
Okay,
No,
good, 'cause
we're
they're gonna transit.
do
Don't
whatever.
have kids out there.
exactly. So we're pretty, free flowing as far as we can up and kind of uproot anytime we really please. But my whole fucking point though was basically that what we see happening with these simulated events like the food chain reaction game, and there's a simulation called Collective Strength that was also, I think, very interesting when it turns out like what you see is they're attempting to control the food chain globally, right? And so you have this there. So while they're simultaneously warning us about famine, all these Agenda 21 benchmarks that they're attempting to basically usher through and achieve within this certain kind of time frame, and so I think that when you see like the food chain reaction game in 2015, and it basically was a simulation that games out this scenario spanning the decade of 2020 through 2030, right? So involving things like climate change, hunger, civil unrest, spiking food prices, all used throughout the exercise, concluding with the US, the EU, India, and there were a lot of different countries that participated in this. And they would come together to institute a global carbon tax and a cap carbon emissions and carbon credit economy, sort of like implementing like a tax on like, the agricultural industry, tax on cattle, things of that nature, right? Because the flatulence and shit causes
stupid
100%. But when you see that's what they're gaming out. Every year they go to Davos and you see, oh, Peter Thiel and Elon Musk they're going to save us. You know what I mean? And then you see him go and bend the knee and kiss the wall. And you see, right. Well, then are you going to take the Neuralink? If it's like, I don't understand how you can be so easily seduced.
There's a lot of people that have like their principle-based arguments, especially we were seeing this on Twitter. Guys, how long ago was it when everybody, I would say right before the 34 accounts were like, or the 34 counts were leveraged against Trump, right? It was like 30, one of them was a felony.
Right.
The other 33,
that
whatever the hell
alone
they were.
felt like political theater, right?
It was theater. It was 100% theater. It was like the same thing they did to Alex Jones when they want him to pay this, insane amount for the whole Sandy Hook thing. And so right around that time, we were experiencing sort of a really heightened moment when it came to the anti-Israel sentiment, when it came to Israel's influence within our own government, and people were really, they were hitting a max noticing, right? Critical mass was happening. And all at once, that went away when Donald Trump had those accounts levied against him, or those counts levied against him, rather. And I thought that was really interesting because you just talked about the whole kissing of the Wailing Wall and things of that nature. I actually have, I'm not going to bother to get it because it's not like you could see it, but I have a gold coin that
Trump
was
shekel.
The Trump shekel.
Yes, exactly. I have the Trump shekel, and he's pictured next to one of their messianic figures, their King Cyrus. They're talking about, on it there's biblical scripture where it says, and he was tasked to build a temple something of that nature, and it's basically it's alluding to that Trump is going to help them build the third temple. If I'm not mistaken, the group that commissioned it, every purchase of this coin, I believe all the proceeds go towards when the temple is going to be built. You have images of him kissing the wall. He's wearing the little hat. He's kissing the wall. He's gifted this silver crown by a group of rabbis that are awaiting. I believe this is all about, their group is all about awaiting their Moshiach, and they're gifting him this silver
Muad'Dib.
I don't know if I still have it. I don't think I do. Maybe I could pull it up. But there is this moment where in 2018, a rabbi who is Oh, wow! Can I pull it up? That was really weird. I just opened up my tab and it was the first thing on my. It's almost like I prepared for this. That's really strange. If I can just find it again. So, where is it? There it is. Wow, that's weird. Okay, so can I go ahead and share this? I just want to show you this because I thought it was really fascinating. Share screen. Boom. Share. So, are you guys getting this? You want to pop that up there?
No, there we go.
All right, so it's just a quick thing. This is from God Reports. This is back in 2018. Rabbi links President Trump to King David, says he's preparing the way for the Messiah. So this is back in the day. This is 2018. A prominent rabbi in Jerusalem has found a mysterious connection between President Trump and King David that may herald unfolding biblical prophecy. He says the signs first became evident during President Trump's election campaign and improbable victory. Jesus. And so if you go on to read it, basically what he is saying, and we could drop that down, he's saying that there is a genetic precedence, that there is some sort of genetic connection between Donald Trump and the biblical King David, which would make him eligible to be their Moshiach. So really
he said paves the way. So I feel like that implies, much like the Dune series, how Paul wasn't actually the Muad'Dib, the Quiznos heart attack, and then later he has a son, and then that son becomes the God Emperor, God King Emperor Worm, like eternal being,
whose
the
son
Worm God
is 18 feet tall and looks like a Nephilim already. It's little Baron Trump.
Oh God! Someone to make Trump as the God King Emperor Worm or whatever from the Dune series. There you go. Not Trump, but Baron. Baron. Yeah.
I mean, it's just so. What I want to establish here is that there are all these people who stand on principle, and let's say that principle is, they are against Israel's influence within our own government. They think it's disproportionate. They have too much power. They don't want it until it's their guy, and then despite the fact that he has maybe more connections, arguably, than any previous. I mean, nobody else was in the running for the Moshiach, and all that gets dropped. It's the same thing you see when so many of us were against the lockdowns. We were just talking about them, and I don't know what we can say on your show, but he is the father of the vaccine. I'm pretty sure we're safe saying that. And he is
Operation
the same guy.
Warp Speed, man.
There you go. Boom. Operation Warp Speed.
Yeah,
these are massive critical points for people of principle and
cognitive dissonance, though.
Yes.
Yes.
It's more so hypocrisy, because to have cognitive dissonance is like really those things are so parallel to one another.
Yeah.
The narrative is out there. It's people are telling you, hey guys, father of the vaccine, Operation Warp Speed. Hey, guys, here's 1.5 million pictures of him kissing the wall. Hey, guys, he got the crown. He's got the silver crown. They put him on the little coin next to they really love him. He's their guy. You ever hear the song Super Trump, made by the Israeli Boys Choir? They made a song about him. It's called Super Trump. It's kind of a banger. I'm not going to lie. But everybody goes, nope, doesn't matter. When he got shot or whatever, that was it. Those people that were wishy-washy on their principles, their morals, 100%. Their values, they became galvanized to this dude. And
it was even more than that. I mean, Mark Zuckerberg basically endorsed him, let him right back on Meta and Instagram. Elon endorsed him immediately afterward. The Peter Thiel network is heavily involved in the background, in my opinion, because immediately JD Vance is chosen to be his VP candidate, and he's the representative of that exact network. And so it's just, to me, like they're the new kingmakers in town in DC, and I think they're all largely, in my opinion, their entire identities have been sort of manufactured by guided PR campaigns from a lot of intelligence agencies who have really kind of propped up these false images of who these people are, these false prophets. They're here coming here to save you and save the First Amendment and give you an alternative. But in reality, it's the problem, reaction, solution of it all, right? It's the trap that we spoke of earlier, right? You know what I mean? It's the false prophecy manufactured by the state, and people continue to fall into that trap. And that's what frustrates me.
It feels like if you look at like the whole pendulum theory of like the pendulum swinging, and it's like we've gone with all, especially particularly looking at the right, with like as crazy as everything's been the past like decade, they've gotten really wise to shit, and have gotten really like for them like a lot of the right has, obviously not all of them, a lot of them suck, but a lot of them gotten wise to bullshit. And it's like it's almost as if there was something that needed to be super like this, like super deep to swing it right back so they fall in line. But like if you really look at this as brass tacks, it's like I think he's gonna likely Trump will have this effect on a lot of his base to where he'll kind of draw them back into the bullshit as you brought up. He's like fucking cuck for Israel, and really like he was the shit on the vaccine, shit on printing money, and it's like the idea is like, oh, it's Trump's gonna save the world, and your other option is Kamala, and she's gonna fucking destroy the world. And it's like, yeah, she sucks, but it's like, in substantively, I don't like really what is the major difference. Like, I don't really not much. I mean, yeah, people bring up that she's brought up like price controls, but it's like, I don't fucking know. I could just as easily see Trump making a case for fucking price controls. Now, whether they actually fall through it or not, I don't fucking know.
I'm telling you, man, that I think that it's the law of a Republican can do more to pass gun legislation than a Democrat, right? Mm-hmm. So they will utilize that pendulum shift. They will utilize, and that's the other thing is that, yeah, the right as well. The ideologically imprisoned, like kind of faction of the right, they're always going to fall into that trap, right? So like, that's the problem is it's when it questions their ideology and brings that to the forefront of their consciousness, they have to run away kicking and screaming. They can't handle that, right? And they usually take it out on the messenger. But the entire point, though, is that you have Trump in office passing more gun legislation than Obama. As soon as Vegas happens, take the guns, deal with the Supreme Court later, like 100%, right? And that's how is that your instinctual reaction? And you're the right wing God king, And so it's just like, to me, he fits this archetypal, kind of predetermined. Like morphed fucking chalk outline that everyone's so sort of conditioned to. One, you're going to have the leftists who view him as clearly such a threat, when in my mind, how is it so hard for people to just come to the understanding none of these presidents, they're 100% there to appease their base, right?
Let me ask you something. Do you guys think that the shot won over a lot of the left?
I think it pacified them to to where they're not going to be as energized for Kamala, to where they're like, I don't know, like this
the assassination attempt thing. Is that
like because what I'm wondering is I don't think a lot of people. I think when you switch sides, it doesn't typically happen all at once. I think a big moment will happen, and you'll kind of freeze in your position. Mm-hmm. And then gradually, as you ease up, you'll eventually, especially as the culture shifts and you're allowed to be for this guy without facing the repercussions that you were. Like, let's say, for example, you were on the left and you started to share pro-Trump sentiments. Well, the left would essentially eat you, right? Your own people would turn on you in the most vicious of ways, and you'd be without a tribe all of a sudden. Mm-hmm. But the Biden administration has put a lot of people on their heels, and they're not quite ready to say they're for Trump, but they are certainly on their heels, and they're looking for a good enough reason to sympathize with this guy. Now, when you say, well, he survived a shot, they tried to shoot him in the head. Yeah. And now what you have is you were already on your heels. You had a disdain for the left. You had a disdain for the Biden administration. And you were looking over to Trump. You were longing for the days of when Trump was in office. And now you can say, oh, well, the humanity of the situation. No? I mean, the man was shot. This is America at the end of the day. And despite the fact that I don't like him, certainly doesn't mean that I condone acts of violence against a sitting president. And so what I think it does is it gives these people, and they're not there yet, but I think we're going to see them gradually come over. The more flubs we have from Biden and the more wins we have from Trump, which I would actually expect. I think we're at the beginning of this big vindication campaign. I think what we're going to see is Trump win after Trump win after Trump win. Whether or not it's manufactured is that could be up to the viewer of the theater as it unfolds. I am of the school of thought that it is manufactured, just because I see this. We were talking about Deadpool before the show started, and it's like there are so many cues happening right now, especially surrounding maybe, let's say, 30 days of the Trump assassination attempt. There were a lot of things that kind of signaled it's time for the pendulum to start moving. Maybe even more so, you could make the argument that it's time for somebody to strap a rocket to the pendulum and send it back in the other direction. What I mean by that is, like, Disney is a massive corporation whose job it is to control culture, right? They manufacture culture. That's one way to look at Disney. And especially considering they're aimed at children. And all of a sudden, Disney signals in one grandiose moment to the tune of more revenue than any previous Marvel film, I think is what ended up happening there, or at least since Infinity War. Have you heard that, Jose?
I've heard shit like that. Everyone's trying to make this up, like, because they've had a lot of duds lately, so they're talking about how this will bring it back. Which, I mean, this is a rated R Marvel movie, and it's like kind of them bringing in some of the ode to the old Fox movies, the OG shit, and then also kind of bringing into the new. So I guess there is a lot of like kind of get where you're getting at. There's almost a lot of symbolism there, and that like here's the new phase. We're kind of old, and now we're going the new.
Yeah,
and I get what you mean.
Civil War, right? I didn't see it, but I read a lot about it. And it seemed like it was like a cultural phenomena at the time.
What's that?
Civil War.
Oh,
I think I even mentioned it when XG was on, actually.
Yeah, I think that was like at the time when it was coming out, it did kind of hit the vein of what was going on.
I'm just saying, like, it's very much in that same vein as like the Obama Netflix series, right? Like where it's this like, or movie. Where they're
like a predictive programming.
Exactly. Social engineering. That's 100% what it is. I mean, at least that's how I feel about it. That's my perspective on it, because if it checks every single box, right? I mean, it's like, then there are no coincidences when it comes to that. So, I didn't even think twice. I know what propaganda looks like. Right. And so that's, but my only problem, man, is like it doesn't matter what you bring up. You can offer as many details as you want, proving that Trump has the deepest of connections to Roy Cohn and pedophilia and Epstein, and nobody gives a shit because, right?
Because they're not. Well, this is what we're getting at, Austin, is that they're not here for the facts. The vast majority of people are here for the story. Human beings are integrally tied into storytelling. Storytelling has been a part of how we share culture, how we share history. There's something about the way it appeals to something in the human experience on such a deep, like, genetic level that it can be effectively used to control us. So when we're watching, you might have all the facts lined up on the table. I might be able to show you, like we just said, the coin and the crown and the wall. He's kissing the wall, yada, yada, yada. But that's not... Until you start to organize those things, maybe, let's say, into a compelling story, you don't have anybody. Nobody gives a shit. Even the most critical of thinkers, it's the reason you come out of a movie theater with this, like, feeling of profound awe when you watch something really. You ever leave a movie theater and even though it's like a fictional story that you just watched on a big screen, something feels different.
Oh yeah.
You leave that bitch and you're like, you feel like you've got a new lease on life. Somehow your lens has shifted and life is going to be different. And it never is, which is where the trick lies.
Never Back Down in like the early 2000s. And you're like, whoa, let's go fight.
Well, look, man, I mean, you watch those videos. You ever see like, there's a bunch of videos right now of people in the streets and they're basically like Tokyo drifting. And it's always funny because like somebody gets hit and goes careening through the air. And 100%. It's like, dude, if you think that Tokyo drift doesn't have anything to do with that, you're dead wrong,
algorithm, dog.
Yeah, we do have the same algorithm. I think that's everybody's algorithm right now.
It has to be.
But there is what the elites have figured out is that it's like the idea of bread and circus, right? You can subdue us. You can lie straight to our faces. You can roll Biden out in a million different versions at varying levels of height with different chins and different earlobes, and you can have him shit his pants in front of the Pope, and nobody will really worry about the fact that they're all different Bidens. What they're actually worried about is that we're at the part of the story where we have a bad leader. That's really all they care about. The leader is bad. The country is suffering. The leader is bad. And we need a strong man to step in. Right. That's a great Namrock. People don't want reality. They want confirmation bias.
Oh,
and
yeah. 100%.
So that's exactly what we're experiencing right now is like we're being served up the greatest comeback story known to man.
This may sound lazy, but I just can't keep stop seeing the parallels between like obviously Hitler, Nazi Germany, because it is kind of like we're going back to the cool vibes. We're putting on cool suits. We're going back to being dudes. We're fucking. We're having a fun time. And then all of a sudden it's like, well, we don't have any grip of this economic anything. And now we're going to war. Oh my God, what the fuck is happening? Oh shit. What they supposedly killed a bunch of Jews? What the fuck is going on?
Dude, no, you hit the nail on the head. We're being served this Jew thing right now. There was a time when it was like maybe applicable to be like, well, hey, there's a disproportionate amount of them represented in a bunch of really high positions in the banking industry, in the music industry, in the media, things of that nature. But now, all of a sudden, it's like, for the longest time, they pushed that conversation down. I even suspect that was by design. Because what you do is you create a pressure cooker effect. You go, hey, you're not allowed to say that. As soon as you say that, you're going to get canceled. You're going to lose your livelihood. You're going to get debanked. Don't talk about that at all, right? And so you press that down, and then somebody comes along, and they buy a platform, and they make it super cool and super fun, and then they take the cage off of the Jew thing, and it just blows up. And in that way, I think that you can create an overreaction. So where it was relevant to ask these questions and maybe come to reasonable conclusions, if you press it down and then eventually peel the top off of it, it just blows way out of proportion. I think that's where we are right now. I saw Stu Peters, who I'm a fan of. He's actually asked us to be... He's asked me to come on stage with him, but he also just had me in a documentary. And guys, I just cut the meanest Jew promo in the world, and I know it's gonna come back and get me, dude. It's the most insane shit in the world. I said a lot. I had a lot of nuance, but the thing is, like, if you're making a documentary and the Raven talks for an hour, but you can only fit 10 minutes of what that motherfucker said in that documentary, I'm cooked, dude. I might as well have been a pro wrestler, been like, and to the Jews, I'm coming for you, brother. Like, it's a wrap when this shit drops. But he said something when, I forget what it was. Something happened. It was a pivotal moment. I might have been like the whole Israel, dropping bombs on somebody. And he goes, if only there was a strong man who can help Europe rise from the ashes. And then he said, like, oh, wait, ... And I was like, but that's the thing, dude. That's where we're going. It's like the rise of the Hitler, bro. It's like they put him to dope-ass techno music and shit. Have you seen those? And it's like...
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Who's making these videos? I do think it's manufactured.
I feel like I wasn't even necessarily getting at the point of the Jew thing, although that is a dynamic there. But it's more just the idea of, like, because obviously, like, that goes to shit. Like, that goes...
Not
so
good.
that's like regardless of the whole Jew thing, it goes bad. Like, so it's this idea of that, like, they get sucked in by this strong man, and then, like, I don't know enough about Nazi Germany history to tell you, but I'd assume he probably had shit economics. It probably was falling apart at the seams in a lot of different ways.
Dope-ass uniforms.
Yeah, but the people were, like, hyped and into it, and it's, with the pendulum thing, eventually the pendulum came back from that strong hero thing, and then came right back the other way, and then, like, there's that overcorrection. And with, I guess you could almost fit the Jew thing into this too, because it's almost like with the steam and the kettle thing, it's like, it feels like Trump is like, will lean into that and pacify his base, so it's almost an attempt to bring it back and let it boil more, but then that kind of leans more into our whole parallel here, and then now, at some point, they'll come back, and it'll be, now that's so overcooking, they're like, I'm not saying that would happen, but it's like, the point being is you may get a crazy overcorrection. I'm not even saying that's a correct. I'm not saying that's a correct prescription. To be clear, I'm just saying that it's like people look for a scapegoat for their frustrations, and if it's like a certain place that has a certain people. Tends to be people start identifying that why is it that this is like what's driven a lot of issues. People are going to scapegoat the fucking peasants of the elite.
Well, that's the thing, right? We do want, this goes back to this, like, we're suckers for a good story. We just want a definitive bad guy. And I do believe that that is what we're seeing here right now. But I just want to try to explain something that I've been cooking on for a while, because I've been trying to think about the antidote to the Hitler bros. I've been hoping that there is one, right? This idea of Hitler being based and, you know, that the we beat the wrong enemy and all this crazy shit.
Oh God.
And so this is, I'm gonna drag you guys a little bit into Nephilim territory, but and I'll make it relatively quick. But you know, you have this guy of in the way of Hitler, and anybody who's watched a fucking third of Europa, The Last Battle, which is literally this guy right here. I watched a third of it. It's a fucking 10-hour documentary. No, it's more than 10 hours. And I go, well, this is very interesting, but something just feels wrong, right? Look, somebody in the thing is like, this dude's annoying. Fuck you, faggot. So,
he shows up, but he tends to be grumpy in the chat. But I like him.
You should see my fan base. Literally, you'll see the people in the thing accusing me of dick farting. Calling me faggot. Those are actually my fans. So, all right. So, basically, when it comes to Hitler, you have a lot of empathy that you could lend to certainly the Germans for the subversion of the Jews, you know, during the Weimar Republic and the Bolshevik Revolution. A lot of the elements that they were creating in German society are elements that you can see kind of mirrored in today's culture. It kind of seems like history's on repeat, especially when it comes to the gender exploration, the fluidity of it, the targeting of children, the trans thing, a lot of the LGBTQ stuff. This is something that's already existed in the Weimar Republic. And so you can then start to empathize with the plight of the Nazis for wanting to rid their culture of that, right?
Yeah, and I do think the DEI, of the woke shit, you know?
Right. And I do think that they correctly identified the problem in that it was Jews, but you can't say like but you can't say that it's all Jews. That's just ridiculous, because some Jews are literally eating bread and you know, whatever they can get at the moment. They're just going through the motions of the day.
Matzah.
Exactly. Yeah, matzah,
the Zionist
correct.
elite.
So then I do believe what ends up happening is, because there's a lot of this idea that there's Hitler has a soft spot for Christianity. And I just can't find any evidence for that. But what I do find is a different kind of religion.
The
not
occult,
just occult
man.
stuff. So when it comes to the Thule Society and things of that nature, there is a lot of occult stuff. But I'm trying to figure out a way to frame it for the average person so that you can see definitively that there's no Christian admiration, there's no Christian iconography. But there is.
Was it Himmler or one of the guys had his own little fucking castle or some shit?
Dude,
and it was like it was almost as if they went through pains of removing Christian iconography. Like what would usually make sense in that sitting to be like Christian, you know, iconography. I guess that's what I was looking for. And then like, but it was more like Norse and like you know, like pre-Christian type stuff, because their whole thing was, at least Himmler, I believe. I might be mixing up people. His thing was like the whole Aryan thing, like them being descended of a race, so looking to the past, pre-Christian. So it was like they were looking like a perfect race, like, and that were descended from them, and ways to somehow get back to him or whatever. Yeah.
So this is I'm looking at the chat here. Johnny Leach says, "Do you know what Dead Jays turn into?" Which is a whole crazy thing. That's Dustin Nemos. He was on our show, and he said that dead Jews turn into. They turn into demons, and that they are the Nephilim. It's a whole thing. It was the craziest shit I ever heard, and it was awesome, honestly. Hitler was a puppet just like every world leader. He took orders from Karl May.
Seems like it.
Yes. And so this is where I'm trying to draw this separation. It's like to empathize with the people of Germany, and even to empathize with the plight of the Nazis and what they were trying to do is reasonable. But then to go like Hitler's my guy is a little bit different. So there are a couple of things. On Nephilim Death Squad, we believe that the Greek pantheon, as well as all the other pantheons, Egyptian, Sumerian, Babylonian, they were real entities. And they could be traced back to their original names, which were the names they had when they were
Jules is in the
rebelling
back
against...
fucking wigging
Yeah,
out.
he's ready to go. Head nodding, bro.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Yeah, I forget that he's back there. So they can be traced back to the 1/3 of the angels that rebelled against God, and God cast them down to Mount Hermon. They go on to create a pact. They have sex with human women. They give birth to the Nephilim, but they rule over mankind. And from one region to the next, they are given different names, but their attributes always kind of stay the same. In other words, like the shit that they were cool with, the things that they did well, always stayed relevant. And so when it comes to Hitler commissions, I forget, some fucking, confusing German name, an artist, an architect to design the fairgrounds from which he's going to be giving his speeches. It's called the Zeppelin Tribune. And in particular, the platform from which Hitler will often famously stand from and scream into the audience while he's on meth was designed after the Temple of Zeus. And the Temple of Zeus was, at the time, it was in the Berlin Museum. And you could see that. That's no secret. You could look up the Zeppelin Tribune and you could look up the Temple of Zeus and you could see it's the same shit. So, the Temple of Zeus was originally found in Turkey, which in ancient times was called Pergamum. And in the Bible, there is a verse that describes the throne of Satan as being in Pergamum, right? So now you have this interesting thing where the only meaningful site that is found in Pergamum in Turkey is the Temple of Zeus, but that's where the Bible says the throne of Satan is. And if you look at Zeus, you can find representations of him throughout other, if you want to call them mythologies, which is, I think it's reductive. I don't believe that that's the case. But in Babylonian texts, he's called Baal. And Baal is also called the King of Storms. And he is depicted as having this short kind of, I wouldn't even call it a staff. It's like 3 prongs sticking out of the bottom of his fist, 3 prongs sticking out of the top. You could look at what he's holding and say, well, that looks like a fucking cluster of lightning bolts, right? So you have this precedence that you can trace Zeus all the way back through a bunch of different, I believe in the Roman mythology, he's Jupiter, but all the way back to the names of the angels that were cast out of heaven.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at the fact that he's, not only is he doing speeches from the Temple of Zeus, but if you look up the eagle and its relation to Zeus, the eagle was the number 1 animal associated with Zeus. It was the animal that he would transform into most commonly throughout the mythology. And of course, that's depicted constantly, even on our own currency. The eagle is there, but certainly when it comes to Nazi iconography, the eagle is front and center.
Right.
And then you go a step further, and it's like, well, he's got literally the lightning bolts are on the SS uniforms. All of these things, for a man that's obsessed with the occult, none of those symbols are on accident.
Those
right?
were runes. Those were actual runes. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. None of those things.
Purpose, yeah.
That is literally the purpose.
I mean, the swastika was a rune.
Yeah,
it was.
Everything
I think
that
they actually inverted it. It went in the other
No,
direction.
that's actually was actually literally just the other day was listening to some like thing and it actually isn't. That's like for some reason some rumor that got moved around. It legit is just that's the swastika.
Okay, so
yeah.
But to Pistolero's point, I see him. He says, "What does this have to do with Jews?" What this
Real
has
quick, I do need to pay the bills. We can come back to the Jews. We always do.
Oh,
I did want to take a second. I have a super chat in Rumble, so I am paying attention to the Rumble. It's from our buddy, the 11-year-old Buy Butcher, I believe. Buy 11 Butcher says, "Suck retards, fix that bookshelf." By the way, I don't know. We all have bookshelves. I don't.
No, it looks like
everybody.
everybody's are leaning. They make fun of me
Yeah,
because
I don't know.
mine is leaning.
Mine's
And
probably fucked up for
before I
sure,
started this show, I tried to make it lean less by fixing the camera. Now the camera's just tilted. So I don't know if it looks better, but people have been bitching about my bookshelf. So I
also do have a patron that did want to tell you that I should have made you dye your hair first before you came on. We have had a lot of comments about your hair.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
quite
Great,
a conversation starter. So in that way, it's great. I do want to let you guys know we're about to go into the call-in portion / audience interaction portion of the show. So this is where we'll start digging into your chats more. So if you have questions or any statements, if you're just saying dumb bullshit, I don't know. I doubt I'll bring it up because that wouldn't make fucking sense. But I do want to take a moment before we get into that to let you guys know about our sponsor, Nadeau Shave Co. If you're tired of that razor burn, irritation, and ingrown hairs caused by those deep penetrating multi-blade cartridges, these are your guys. Go back to traditional shave. You don't need that expensive nonsense. You can shave like your grandpa used to. This is a dope thing. You can see by the pictures, the twist to open handle, electroplated black. God, my fucking tongue today. Sorry, Nadeau. Whether you're shaving your entire face or just edging up your beard, our single blades provide a barber grade shave for a fraction of the price. Speaking of which, when you get someone with a lisp to do a sponsor, you get it for a fraction of the price as well. Upgrade your shaving system. The standard issue comes with one traditional safety razor and a box of 100 stainless steel blades. That's $75 for the entire year, but let's be real, you'll probably make that last longer. But if you're one of those people who shave on the regular, consider the Quarter Shave Club. That puts you about 25 cents per replacement blade. This is a COVID mandate refusing company. In fact, that's how the company was born, out of refusing the COVID mandate. He's also got natural soaps, and there's like a 3-in-1 and like shave soaps. I use the 3-in-1. Good stuff. Smells good. It's like clean smelling, soap smelling, but like manly in a way too. It's good shit. It works for fucking soap, shampoo, shave. I used it for all of them. But yeah, use Jose at checkout at nadeaushaveco.com. All right, guys, I'm going to get that get that number up for you guys, 941-281-5857. We'll start digging into the chat. We'll let Raven pick up with his point on the Jews or something along those lines.
Oh, right.
In the meantime.
Right, so all I wanted to say is in regards to the Jews, this has nothing to do with the Jews. What I'm saying is it is one thing to notice that there is Jewish subversion happening on a grand scale. It is another thing to say Hitler is my guy. And I don't think you need to make that leap at all. I think you can notice, certainly something is going on. Israel's not good. There seems to be the Jews, and the Talmud also doesn't seem to be good, but also does not mean that Hitler's your guy.
Totally, man. And I think, to your point on sort of artificial anti-Semitism, to a certain extent on social media, I 100% believe that for sure, because I feel like it kind of helps facilitate certain narratives as well. And as far as that are very productive for individuals who can leverage power and kind of, are in arm's reach of the levers of power, sort of. And that's kind of how I feel when it comes to the anti-Semitism kind of being facilitated through social media. I kind of balk at that only because when you're in the midst of a genocide, right, it's you're going to have this natural reaction and it's going to be extreme. I do think that I 100% agree that there's an artificial aspect to it online. And I think that only, makes it more and more extreme and can radicalize things extraordinarily. But I do think that it's almost natural in many ways as far as how much I'm seeing it, because just when you really consider, I don't know what your guys, as far as your algorithm is, but I see so many dead Palestinian babies. You know what I'm saying?
I also follow Jake Shields.
We are mutuals, yeah.
Right. But it's antiwar.com, just you know what I mean? It's, and I'm just principally opposed to military conflicts. I just am, as far as my moral foundation. And it's kind of one of the things that I hold most important, as far as just certain principles I've kind of outlined for myself. But I do want to say, man, when I heard you guys on TFH, you said something that resonated with me, and it was mainly because throughout, first of all, you said that basically when you came to religion, just to sort of, or Christianity, whatever you want to call it, when you were considering it, and as far as your approach to it, you didn't come in with this emotional baggage, this psychological baggage that many people do, and many people have been affected by just by their personal lived experience from childhood or whatever the case is, and I just felt like that's so important for people to have an open mind and maintain an open mind, like, and be willing to consider the baggage that they're coming into any, just any equation. You have to be willing to reflect on your own personal shortcomings, right? And so I just think that it's tainted many people's perspectives when they come to condemning others for having just whatever belief system they embrace, as long as it's not facilitating evil and hatred and of any kind. Then of course it's like, I just think what resonated with me was that throughout all my research, man, like I went through this crazy evolution. I grew up and like I said, in that rural area, kind of exposed to this evangelical strain of Christianity that was really kind of like this Christian Zionism, in many ways. Yeah, there's a huge aspect of that.
Believe it or not to interrupt you, but I actually, as a 34-year-old man, only experienced that for the first time recently. I'd never been to church. I said that on Tinfoil Hat that I had no history with it. And I went into it. I was trying to find one. And I made the mistake of going into like a Walmart church.
Oh, shit. Yeah,
dude. And it was like an evangelical church. And this is when everything first started happening between Israel and Palestine. And they were more or less saying, and I know you were just getting to this, oh, well, the horrifying things that are happening are justified because it's going to bring about the return of Christ. And then the Jews will see that they're wrong. And I'm like, that does not feel right, dude.
Right,
what are we talking about here?
It's wild. I did want to comment earlier. Don't mean to cut off what you were getting at, Austin. But I know you and Top have gone into it with Adam Green, but I did find it very interesting his idea that, and I don't think you necessarily have to subscribe to the idea that it was all intentional in the sense that like all of this is fake, none of these are real, but the idea of that, I guess maybe you could say it's been, conformed to this over time to where almost there's this Abrahamic dialectic between all the different forms between the, Islam, Christianity, Judaism, and how they kind of, especially if you look at their end times prophecy and how they all kind of perfectly play off of each other. And it's like, to get back to the Trump point, it's like, look at this fucking guy, and you're like, think about what, and I don't know. I used to, it's funny because I remember rolling my eyes at my parents when I was a kid because they would be talking about like all the stuff going on and like with September 11th and stuff and be like, oh my God, end times. Right. And you're like, but now you're like, I don't know, man. I'm not even religious. So it's like, I'm like, because I'm more coming at from the point of like, I think there are forces out there that may very well be trying to make it happen. Even if there aren't like ones that are well organized overtly, just the fact that is an idea and almost an egregore amongst all these different different religions, that it would just naturally kind of set incentives in place that would move things that way. You know what I mean? Especially if you think about the Abrahamic religions, that's basically the vast majority of the world,
Yes. Yeah. I think that there's a lot of validity to that. I think that I can't say that I look around and don't see an attempt to manufacture end times prophecy. It seems almost glaringly obvious to me. And so I think that there's room for both of these things. I think that there's validity in the Abrahamic religions. I come from a weird childhood where I had like schizophrenic family members and, this notion of like sleep paralysis and entities and things. Like my entire life has been filled with weird shit that I can't dismiss. It makes for interesting campfire stories, but it's not something that comes up in practical conversation very much. But I've seen strange things that I couldn't place until I had this piece of the puzzle, and then suddenly it made a lot of sense. That being said, I think it's a why not both situation. I think that there certainly is a spiritual aspect to the realm that we inhabit. I think that there is a God. I think that Jesus Christ is a central figure to this entire experience. However, I also can see the elites, which is a very gay term, the elites manufacturing end times prophecy. And before we move on, I just want to say that I go back and forth on that, the elites manufacturing end times prophecy. And the reason that I do is because we've gotten to the point where, they have weather manipulation. It's so hard to tell what is a natural occurrence and what can be manufactured by man. And then it begs the question, if we are at the stage where it can be manufactured by man, is that still a fulfillment of prophecy? And also on the Adam Green note, I never actually had a disagreement with Adam Green. He used to follow me. He followed my account when I first came on Twitter, which is very strange because I wasn't anybody at the time. And I was like, who's this guy following me? And then I found recently that he had me blocked. And I've never actually had any Discord with him. But I don't dislike Adam Green. I know, to Christians, he's very subversive and Jewy, but that's okay. Like, if you have different ideas, a lot of the time I look at this thing like we're all just a bunch of retards trying to figure out what the hell is going on.
100%.
And just because you have different ideas than me, I just like people that have the spirit of exploration and they're trying to figure it out, because that's where I came from. So,
all right, we have one of our supporters is here joining us. This is a perk you guys get.
Oh, shit.
If you decide to give us money, you can hop in as one of these talking heads. What's up, my bud? Glad to have you back. What it do?
What's going on, man? 2 weeks in a row. I had to do this one. So, good morning, Raven. Good night. Good evening, fellas.
Good morning, dude.
All right. So, here's the thing. A lot of inconsistency in churches these days. You've got Baptist ministers with the prosperity gospel getting their tax status revoked. You got Jerry Falwell Jr. with the cuckold stuff. You've got a diocesan split amongst the Catholics of going vax mandates, some giving religious exemptions, some not.
Right.
What church did you land on, Raven? And have you ever considered starting your own?
That's a great question. So sometimes I go back and forth with the idea of whether or not a church is necessary. I believe there is a passage that says where two or more gather in my name. And I sometimes think that maybe, and this is, I don't want to, I think we have to, in order for me to say what I'm about to say, I have to lessen the opinion of what a church has to be. Does a church have to be this giant brick and mortar establishment with steeples, with pews? Does it have to play out in a way where there is a band that primes the people to receive the word of God? Is it? I don't know that, and I'm not saying that that's not the case. It very well might be the case, but I'm retarded. Can a church be a podcast where we're, especially in 2024, where things look so different than they ever have historically? You used to congregate in a place in your small town with your peers and your neighbors. I don't even know my peers and my neighbors anymore, right? Yeah. So it's like, maybe this is a kind of fucked up equivalent of that. It's like, I don't think, as far as trying to start my own, no, I don't consider starting my own, because I wouldn't presume to be the mouthpiece of God. But if you could say that a church is just where people come together to try to understand the word of God and build a relationship with God and be drawn closer to Jesus Christ, if that's the bar for entry, then I would say that Nephilim Death Squad is something of the sort. But the closest I got was Orthodox, would have been Orthodox Christianity. There is a Greek Orthodox church not far from where I am, but I am, despite my appearances on shows and my proclivity for speaking on camera, I don't like people, dude. And so it's like, it's so hard for me to go, I'm going to expose my family my wife and my son
Right.
to people that I don't know just because they inhabit the same building as me. I know
just
that
people
there's
in general, really.
just people in general. I mean, I go to the
Yeah.
mall and I'm like, fucking what's up? So I don't know, but that it's an interesting question, one that comes up fairly often, actually.
I had to ask because in 4 years of Catholic school, I never read the Bible as much as I have following up you guys and Ed Mabry. So
that's awesome. That's the
why I
only
had to-
goal, dude.
that's why I had to throw it at you. So have a good one.
Thank you, brother. Thank
No,
you.
Appreciate it, bud. We'll see you. Real quick, we do have another super chat from our other 11-year-old by Butcher. Gotta get some rest to continue to build the infrastructure. That's how it was phrased. I'm sorry. Love you guys' content. Keep at it, boys. Never stop seeking truth. Appreciate it. Keep sending us the money from your parents' credit card. We appreciate it.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah.
It's a real 11-year-old.
I don't know. It's by 11 the Butcher. I
would
made a
be so
joke
funny,
once, and
dude.
so now I just keep
It's the
referring to
butcher.
it.
I think I know who
Yeah,
that is. I think
but it's
I know
BI11. But that someone said that later after there was like, I think that means Bill. I'm like,
Yeah, it's
no,
Bill the
it's a
butcher.
by 11-year-old. It's
Yeah.
an 11. It's an 11-year-old with her parents' fucking credit card going through an identity crisis.
And he's just being led around by fucking Nephilim Death Squad
Yeah.
and already dead. That's not good.
Hey, that's a positive development. They'll drop that whole bi thing here soon. Become like a raging fucking anti-Semite or whatever. Seems like all the women. I had this thought recently. I feel like it's a banger tweet, and I guess this maybe is a good segue to kind of a talk. I don't know how much you've been paying attention to Candace Owens recently, and how wild in like a good way she's been. I don't know if you remember that God, what was his name? Neocon remover, that fucking Twitter account, and he had that tweet. He had that tweet that gets shared around a lot. That's like, because he had a lot of great banger tweets, and it was like something along the lines of how women don't understand OPSEC. Like, I'll have 12 different burners just to tell just to say the government that like politicians, fuck kids or whatever. But then my wife will tell everyone, and like at the fucking family reunion, like that's the same energy that like Candace has. Is like no fucking OPSEC, just like you know what, Sabbatay and Frankus. Let me just tell you, you're like whoa. I mean, like you're like I'm basically on the same wavelength as you, but you are just kicking the door open. Like fuck you,
Right.
bitches.
I like a lot of what she's doing, but it goes into the same thing. I have some homies, in particular, Donnie Darkened, who's recently turned over to Donnie Discerned, and Donut. What up, Donut? Is a creator on YouTube, very popular page, and these two guys are echoing sentiments that's been they've been brewing in my mind, which is to touch on what we spoke about before, this manufactured heightened level of Jew noticing. And I like Candace Owens, but there is this thing happening where there is this rise of some form of Christianity coupled with this noticing of Jews. And it almost feels as though, you would think as a show that focuses predominantly on Christianity. I don't know if I would consider myself a Christian. I do believe that Jesus Christ died for our sins, was crucified, and was resurrected. But I don't know that I would consider myself a Christian just because I don't attend church and things of that nature. That being said, you think that it would be good for me as a show called Nephilim Death Squad. Any uptick in Christianity would be potential real estate for me, right? I recognize that, but I'm like, okay. You come from a para-political angle, and would you say that you could agree with the sentiment that many years ago you were alone in your noticing?
Yeah, I was once alone. I was a one-man wolf pack, and then my wolf pack grew one by one.
100%.
So, all right, me too, right? 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. These were very hard years for me. I was virtually isolated in my ideas. I would espouse them to my homies, and they would desperately wish that I would shut the fuck up. Like, that was all. They were like, please just smoke this and stop talking to me about this. And I couldn't. I don't think that human nature has changed, dog. I think that people are still not paying attention. I think the bar for entry to notice has been lowered, and that feels like it's been by design. And what worries me is, okay, when I was
noticers, this kind of
Yes.
goes to our point where we're getting at, which we're kind of threading this thin line with like the noticing and like all the because it's like we even admitted within this very episode, for those who want to use this out of context, that like we're not saying that like Jews themselves, or at least not as a collective, are like, I mean, I guess maybe depending on how you're contextualizing that, but even then, I guess I wouldn't say that they are the issue, or that any violence should be done to them or anything along those lines. But there is this like, and there is to some extent like a little bit of a fucked up, like I when people are those hardcore stupid nosers, I kind of don't mind too much, because for one, they're pretty harmless, and then also too, it's like you feel like maybe with a little nudge you could get them to like kind of see the light a little bit, and
Yes.
they're already in a certain weird like over the top way on the right path, but not really. Like
that's great. That's a great way of putting it, because
they got misled at a turn somewhere. Like
yes. All right.
sorry, I must have a delay, or maybe one of us does.
No, what happens is every once in a while it'll seem like you stop talking, and then it'll all of a sudden continue.
Catch up. Yeah.
And it'll speed it up a little bit.
Yep.
So, all right, this is a great point that you've made here, because this is something that I've been kind of. You have this expression of like the Great Awakening, right? You have a lot of greats: the Great Awakening, the Great Deception, the Great Reset, and people often say that we're in the middle of the Great Awakening, and they look at that like that's a good thing, and I think that that's not such a great thing, because it is coupled with the Great Deception.
A lot of people aren't ready to see behind the veil.
It's not even just that. It's like
Yeah.
when you just
They may
wake
not
up,
understand what's behind the veil because they're not primed and ready. Sorry.
and all right, so
Darkness,
no,
too.
that's great though. So this is it. It's like, imagine you just woke up, and you're still shaking off the confusion. Not even that you just woke up. Somebody woke you up. Something very jarring, like maybe COVID, woke you up out of a deep slumber, and you were suddenly faced to realize like there's something wrong with the world, right? So you're waking up, you're awoken abruptly, and then somebody bursts in the room and they start telling you exactly what's going on and exactly what we need to do and what the problem is and how to solve it. But they're fucking lying to you. And you're still in this daze. And you just kind of, you ever see, I watched a video recently, some chick wakes her boyfriend up and starts playing Uno with him. She's like, babe, it's your turn. And he's like, what the? And he starts like, and he's looking at his cards and he's looking at her cards and he puts down like a reverse card. And after he puts it down, he's like, bitch, what the fuck? Like, and then he finally realizes and he goes back to sleep. You can take advantage of people. You can deceive them when they've first woken up. This is the problem. So when I was younger and I was 16, 17 years old and I'm looking around and I'm like, guys, did you know that the plan is to implement martial law? Did you know that they can take Walmarts and convert them into FEMA camps like that? It's no problem. Did you know they have thousands of giant plastic coffins for all the bodies and all this crazy shit? This is what I'm saying back in like 2006, 2007. And everybody's going, yeah, dude, that's real nice, right? Now, luckily, nobody was there to reciprocate my bullshit. And because of that, I was forced to like calm down and think about it. And I found that I was wrong about a lot of things, and I was right about some other things, but I was certainly wrong at the speed of which things were going to take place. And imagine instead if I had an army of retards to confirm all the shit that I was saying. Dude, I see the plastic coffins too. You're absolutely right. Well, who's doing this? Who is doing this? I don't know. Is it the Bilderbergs? Is it the Rockefellers? What do we do? Right now, it's the Jews.
So you're also, I kind of got from that a thread of that you're kind of hyping up, there's also the dynamic of the stupid noticers and then also the influencers. I guess in this example, I like Candace. I think she's good, but I could also see how a woman could get kind of like a hyped up mid,
emotional.
Well, it's not even that. It's like that you get kind of pushed into, especially as a pretty girl.
Yeah.
Like if you have any ideas that you put out online, everyone will be like, "That's amazing. That's great."
Yeah.
I mean, and like,
Well,
I mean,
she's
obviously she's experiencing some issues with people pushing back against hot bun issues, but like obviously that then becomes you're pushing back because of XYZ. But there is, I don't know. I just thought that was there's something to that, and like a bunch of stupid noticers, and then also the flip side of it that even while maybe some of them may be well intentioned or whatever, they can easily start getting hyped up on their own farts type deal.
Exactly. So, I think that you have to give people time to cook. We're ultimately what we're talking about is the conspiracy of everything, right? I mean, that's what it is, and it's like a lot of people, their eyes just opened after COVID. Some of them opened a little bit faster than others. Some of them opened really slow. So 2021, 2022, now some of these motherfuckers have been awake for 2 years, and they think they nailed it. It's the fucking Jews, baby. Hook, line, and sinker. The end of it. What are we going to do about it? And the problem is you look left, you look right. What are we going to do about it? And there's a bunch of people reciprocating the sentiment and also looking for something to do about it. And I didn't have that, man. And all I know is like, thank God I didn't have that because I was such a retard and I was wrong at so many turns and I'm still wrong all the time. And for you to have just woken up 2020, 21, 22, 23, you got on Twitter, Elon lifted the ban on certain phrases or words, and you think you got it all figured out. Hey, look, there's a good chance you are smarter than me, but I hope that you have the time that I was allotted to sit back and unpack this shit because I would have made a lot of mistakes had I had the ability to like mobilize and get some homies around me.
Real quick, just to go back to the audience on our algorithm discussion earlier and kind of theory of everything as well. He says my algorithm the last few days has been cum drinkers. Apparently, I'm not too hip on this conspiracy, but there is a conspiracy that you will legitimately become like the Ubermensch, I guess, by devouring jizz. Which I guess that does check out. You look at Raven; he does look very Ubermenschist right now.
But not your own jizz, specifically
your hair color
horse
changes
jizz.
and everything.
That was just the horse jizz that did that. Turns out if you use it as a conditioner, it
Well, I
just
was
happens naturally.
referring to the Box Saga shit. I don't know how much I've heard tell of it here and there, but never really dug too deep into it. I know the few people that I actually know are in the know take it way too seriously, and then whenever they try to get interviewed, get like really ass mad. Like, there's more to it than just drinking cum.
Right. Well, so basically, what that's in reference to is like me and Top have been. I actually have my Twitter account banned right now. So if you follow me at David L. Corbo, unfortunately, I won't be able to interact with you until maybe 4 days from now. I'm on a timeout because there's a couple of guys that are really into the Box Saga. One of them is on the Union of the Unwanted. Another one is another show I don't care to mention, but they mentioned us and they accused us of being grifters, taking advantage of a Christian community, adhering to things that we don't believe strictly for monetary gain and yada, yada, yada. And the first time they said it, we dragged them a little bit. We didn't really care. Then they got on Sam Tripoli's show and they tried to say the same thing, and Sam Tripoli ended up defending us. They were too afraid to bring up our name, like we're the boogeyman or some shit. And Sam Tripoli actually had to say, like, I love Nephilim Death Squad, by the way. So we had these moments where they kept nudging us. And then Top and I decided, you know what, dude, we're done. So we went on a week-long dragging them campaign on fucking Twitter. I ended up getting my account banned. But we mostly made fun of them for drinking cum, which... What I'm going to say is, and they admitted to drinking cum. Wild. And it's just an insane thing. You're dealing with trolls, and you're like,
what
I
kind
drink
of cum are they drinking?
It's their own cum. I don't know if it's a self-fellatio thing. I don't know. I don't understand it. All I know is, like, I don't care if you drink your own cum. I'm fine with that. But when you drag me, it's like, all right, Jose, you ever have a fat friend anywhere in your life?
Yeah.
And you just love them.
I never make fun of them for being fat, but I will roast the fuck out of a fatty, yeah.
Right. If you happen to come at me and you happen to be fat, I'm going to drag you for being fat.
Yeah, this is kind of like I remember I did an episode a long time ago on the Joe Rogan nigger reel thing.
Oh, yeah.
And I did there was like a article that came on after, and I literally did a big brain episode. I actually had, because I think, was it today or yesterday was the anniversary of his death? Death Crips, he was on it, or Crip Daddy. He was on that episode, and then I had another guy, Marcel, forgive me, I forget his last name. But anyways, we big brained and also kind of made it funny because I had Crip Daddy on there, that episode. And that was one point I got to, and that, like, when it comes to using it, like, I don't genuinely have a problem with, but I could see myself, like, as we're losing all the different contexts in which it would be appropriate and blah 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 blah, like big braining, and it's like I would use that to someone I don't like.
Yeah.
Like if there was a circumstance where I'm like, I just know that will get under your skin because it will, and it's what I want to do. Yeah, I'm gonna fucking push that button.
It's the same thing with Jews, right? It's like
when
I know
in Rome,
Jews that I like. I know Jews that I like personally. I know Jews that are on Twitter that I'm homies with. Shout out to
it's indicative of nothing other than I just want to make you mad.
That's it. It's 100% just that. What's the girl's name? The redheaded Jew ginger kind of character. She's actually very funny.
Oh yeah.
But she's the homie. Her and I go back and forth a few times, and I actually like her. I don't give a fuck that she's a Jew. But if I don't like you and you happen to be a Jew, I'm going to destroy you with that because I know that it bothers you. So it's very much the same thing with the Box Saga. It's like, look, dude, do you think that you can gain some sort of like advanced knowledge by sucking your own cock and swallowing your own cum, and that's where the secrets lie? All right, dude. Fuck, man. That's cool.
Yeah.
If you're my homie, that's cool. I'd be like, yo, I got this fucking dude. He's one of my boys. Drinks his own cum. But I'm not gonna lie, super smart guy. So correlation, I don't know. But if I don't like you, I'm gonna drag you on the internet. So yeah, as far as the algorithm feeding you. If you go back and just look at Top has decided, Top's been in Puerto Rico for like 4 days or 5 days, and he's been dragging this dude for drinking cum from a third world country. It's been unbelievable.
I really feel like if that is a thing you do, you don't come to the masses with that until you have some data to back it up. Like,
right.
Or some like really good examples. Like, yeah, I know that maybe these are anecdotal, but like, come on, they clearly stand out. Like,
I need to see you. You need to drink a lot of cum and go on the debate stage, and I need to be wowed. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
Or at least have some followers that I can look at and be like, well, how'd you get those followers? Dropping profound knowledge. That's how I got these followers. I dropped profound knowledge because I swallowed my own cum. But there's none of that. You know what I think it is, honestly, too? I think it's lazy. The idea that you can't read books, so you drink cum, and that's going to do all the work for you? Like, come on, dude. Come on. Just read the books.
Yeah. I was thinking some sort of thread there between like drinking. Am I gay for reading or you?
Dude, I don't know what's gayer. Is it sucking your own dick or reading? That's incredible.
Oh, you faggot! I just sucked off a dick and got fucking 100 books in there.
Well, yeah. Honestly, if you caught me reading and you were like, "Oh, fucking reading that whole book, huh? How many pages is that?" I'm like, 400 pages. You're like, "Yeah." All I did was swallow 2 loads, dude. 2 loads. I know that whole book. I'd be like, I am a faggot. Yeah. I didn't be swallowing these loads, dude. That
would be a hard one because it is
that would be a hard one.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I'd do that. Like, I'd do that trade-off.
I have
not 100 books.
Albert Pike's Morals and Dogma. Right. This is a fucking 800-page book. Yeah. If I could swallow 2 loads and absorb 800 pages, I would have done it.
But what kind of absorption are we talking? Are you talking about like your intimate detail of like every little everything, or are we talking like a normal like as if you read it?
Oh, I don't want like read the back page summary. Like if I gotta swallow 2 loads and I just get the summary,
have perfect recall.
I want to be able exactly like you gotta be like what's on page 747.
Okay, because that is another level of recall. That's like reading a book like to front to back and the fucking index and everything like 10 times. Yeah.
That's it. Probably more than 10 times because I read shit and then I'm like, what the fuck did I just read? That's why I don't read. I'm retarded.
Now to even get that kind of recollection for even one book is insane. So
incredible.
Like,
you better use it well too. I don't know how
do
I have to suck Albert Pike's cock to
dude, I think okay, now you're talking me into it. Like I would like 100 assorted books with just your normal if I read it isn't even as valuable as one book that you can recall every little thing in. Like so, like one book that you can recall every little thing in, like down to the little bit of some minutia, and you actually understand it, not just like recall it. I think I might suck a dick.
It's definitely a selling point. Now, if I were to talk to, that's the thing too. Is these people are like, oh, you don't even understand the Box Saga. You're so like surface level with your shit. I'm like, you're right, dude. I don't understand the Box Saga. I'm just dragging you. I don't care about Bach or anything. It's just hilarious that it rhymes with cock. Who didn't think that through at all?
For real. Apparently there's like a ton of lore to it from what I recall, but like
I'm not mad at it. It's fine. There might be something interesting there, but just don't come for me, because I'm gonna drag you on the internet, and don't come for me. I'll drink it. No, I'm just saying, man. Whatever it is that you think you're gonna say to me, I'm literally an unserious person on Twitter. Twitter is for making fun of white women and saying racist shit. It's not for intellectual conversation. I don't believe that. I do a show where I speak for 2 hours at a time. That's where we can have conversations. Right. What does it say? Have them explain why women and the gays are so retarded. That is a great point. That's a great point. Oh, man. If I was not banned right now on Twitter, that would be my first thing that I'd go and...
Someone had put up in the chat earlier that the Egyptians said it was poison, so it's like, I don't know.
Well, and then what they did is they showed me hieroglyphics of the Egyptians sucking their own cocks, and I'm like, so that means that you could do that. That means that you saw the Egyptians suck their own cocks, so you can suck their own cocks. Do you not believe that within Egyptian society there was a couple of self-fellatioing ass Egyptians rolling around? Of course there was. Does that mean that they're the people you should be looking to? I don't know. Probably not.
Or someone was just not like, hey, Zohar, look at that funny hieroglyph I made.
Yeah. Either that, or like somebody made that hieroglyph and they were like, who's that? And they're like, that's Ahmed. I made Ahmed. He's an asshole. I made him suck his own cock.
Yeah. Okay. Well, what else we got in the chat? What do you guys want to talk about? Yes, Crip Daddy died, by the way, for those who aren't aware. If that's news to you, I'm sorry. That was like a year ago or some shit. But yeah, what else we got going on? I feel like this week was a dead week in the world of current events.
I know they erected a gigantic monkey statue. It's a Vedic god, the Monkey King, I believe. I forget where that was. I don't know if it was in Cincinnati or some silly shit like that. But I just think it's
like Sun Wukong or whatever, was it?
Right, but it's just fascinating that during the midst of a monkeypox outbreak, they always do weird shit like that. It's kind of like, dude, is this really the time? Is that done in poor taste? I feel like that's not. Somebody didn't think that through. And maybe they commissioned the statue long before the monkeypox outbreak. But when these things line up like that, I'm like, fucking really? That feels a little bit on the nose,
Well, I mean, if it was Sun Wukong, to be fair, I think that's like a huge cultural figure over there in Xinjiang.
Right, but this is actually in. This is in America, and
never mind.
Yeah. I'm gonna see if I can find it because.
Which fun fact? Sun Wukong is like pretty clearly, this is like actually a lot of anime, but very clearly, Dragon Ball Z is a reference to Sun Wukong.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't even think about that.
My boy Juan, shout out Juan, of the One-on-One podcast, just did an entire episode that I have to watch still. Of Dragon Ball Z and all its occult connections, and if there's anybody that's gonna nail him, it's gonna be Juan. He knows his shit.
I mean, I guess I don't know what it means by occult. If he's just getting it, because I think what Sun Wukong, I don't even believe they actually think he's a god. I think it was kind of like a fairy tale thing, from what my understanding. I guess you could make it that. There's ways to get there with that, but yeah.
I don't think that's the statue. That's a hilarious statue, though. Man, I gotta see if I can find monkey god statue. It just seems strange. I don't know. It's oh, here we go. So in Texas, there's a 90-foot statue of Huneman, Hindu monkey god. What is the United States anymore? Yeah, that's a great point. What is the United States anymore? What do you guys think when it comes to like? So what's been on my mind a lot lately is whether or not the idea of a multicultural melting pot can be successful. And I'll pass the ball to you, but I just want to say that I think it can be successful without a subversive government, or I guess some people would say without the Jews. And the reason I say that is because when there is people can typically live together in harmony, but when there's no cohesive culture, especially when you have instances of like people coming from other countries and being able to avoid assimilation by going to a niche community where they don't speak the language, they don't have to share cultural values, they can live exactly as they live in, insert another country. What that does is it leaves gaps in the fabric of the culture for someone to come in and subvert. Do you know what I mean? So like, you can sow racial discontent between one group and another. You can sort of leverage religious beliefs in a negative way from one religion to another. And I go, am I naive in thinking that we can live together absent the presence of a subversive, let's say, government? Or do you think I'm naive?
Oh, actually, no. I meant to say you can. I actually, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Austin. But this is straight up. This is straight up from Democracy of the God That Failed with Hop. I know it's a little bit of a boring answer because we usually go a little bit deeper, but it is. This is what democracy incentivizes, and he kind of brings up the point that if you don't have these incentives that are created by the state, and he points to a lot of historical examples and how populations used to disperse and how they would likely also disperse in a thing with less, distortions in the market, which is what you can call the government. In what would typically happen in the areas of high populate or like the trading areas or whatever is you would have usually people of all different cultures coming to sell their wares, and usually they would be of like a mid to higher level, of repute or whatever, I guess better people, I guess you could say. And they would interact amongst each other. And this is where you'd get a lot of like interracial marriages or intercultural marriages and stuff like that, because they would kind of meet there. But this was almost like a breeding ground of culture where people who were clearly doing well in whatever their trades are interacting in this area. But then as, welfare and, democracy comes along and it incentivizes using groups against each other, and you essentially you create like negative incentives with like welfare, and it starts to populate. Essentially, it flips this dynamic entirely to where it used to be, with less democracy or less fucking coercion, you used to have like a breeding ground of races, essentially, but in a good way, or cultures, I guess is a better way to put it. And they would essentially, the better cultures would come out over time, essentially, kind of, I'm kind of losing my train of thought here, but point being is that the fucking now you have the opposite where you have all these fucking welfare being given to people for their identities, or people trying to give money bags to this identity, weaponized against that identity, and now you have all these essentially bads you've created that are essentially interacting. So the negative, you're essentially incentivizing these people to live in the way they do and procreate amongst these cultures.
Sometimes I wonder if maybe you could have, like, let's say even the welfare programs, maybe you could have them if you removed the media. And what I mean by that is like this idea of like victimhood culture, especially I think in particular, victimhood culture is propagated by the media. So you have these giant, sort of media conglomerations that are all pushing the same messaging when it comes to, let's say, black people, for example. I think they're best exemplified because it's certainly like black culture, I think, is maybe the most manipulated by culture. And they've been stripped of whatever culture is not indigenous, but natural to them. And they've been given instead in its place a victim of, or a culture of victimhood. And that is like sort of the crux of everything. So if you have like these welfare programs and you make it so that they're easily taken advantage of, and then you tell the people who are most likely to be using the welfare programs that they are victimized by every other culture, in particular white people, well, then they feel justified in taking advantage of those systems that are already very easily taken advantage of. They make them so that they're porous and can easily be, leveraged. So I kind of wonder, like, maybe are the programs the problem, or is it sometimes I wonder if culture is fucking evil.
I think it's so much of it is rooted in the Edward Bernays vein of let's say Yuri Bezmenov ideological subversion by utilizing basically the destructive nature of collectivism and cultural Marxism and exploiting group dynamics, right? And honestly, like, it really does seem like society, for the most part, is self-organizing. So for the most part, you see self-segregation, right? Where like groups choose to live amongst their peers for the most part. That has always been at least throughout history. You can point to that in more often than not as the example of the reality we reside in. And so
like Little China, or like
100%, man.
in New
Little
Jersey,
Italy.
we had a little Little Italy, or there was even a little India, like Pakistan,
Chinatown in LA. I mean, it's the same thing here. And so to me, collectivism in any form, it's clearly just, it's inherently opposed to individualism, right? And I think they've been attempting to root out the individuality within us that really comes naturally, I think, for most of us, unless we're conditioned otherwise. I really do think that's, for the most part. I don't know. Maybe people have terrible instincts.
I do think there is something to like blood and soil. And I know those are like charged words, but I do think there is something to, and what I mean by that is culture. And I guess it doesn't necessarily have to be tied to the land or tied to the people, but I do think it kind of, in some senses, it makes it more authentic and strengthens it. So, and I guess you could call that collectivism, but I do think that's kind of what culture is. People naturally kind of acting in certain ways because of certain
I'm saying you could leverage
trends.
it.
Okay.
Right. I think it's a natural thing for people to want to live amongst their peers. That it's just, honestly, it's a self-segregating. I believe that's the natural part of it. Right. Honestly. And so my whole point there is that basically it's the hidden hand of the state, as is always the case. And they continually exploit, right, these collectivist ideas. And I believe that's why the ideological subversion has been rooted in public education and the American Education Board. And you can look at, like, when I did my cultural Marxism episode, you can trace this back so long to Tavistock, the Frankfurt School. So this is social engineering, right? And it at the highest level. And we are now witnessing the consequences of that for generations. And so when Yuri said this in 1984, after he allegedly fled the Soviet Union as a KGB, agent, when he said this, he's in 1984, he said, "We're already too late. We're so far gone. This ideological subversion, the tenets of Marxism, have been pumped into the soft heads." Right.
This is where he talked about destroying faith in the institutions.
The long march through the institutions. Exactly.
We're at that point for certain. It's
we're
like,
there,
name an institution that you don't go like, that is a literal fucking scam. Whether 100%. It's our media institutions, our educational institutions, our government institutions, our military institutions.
And they tend to be the entities that you can point to as clearly committing the most absurd atrocities. You know what I mean? And so it's, to me, I think that evil always has to infiltrate covertly, in many ways. Like, clearly, I think, like, for the person who is more aware of things, the veil has fallen. You are not their target demographic. And so they, in my opinion, are kind of at the point to why it seems like it's just being shoved down our throat, and they're kind of mocking us and laughing at us while we notice this symbolism, and
I
things
think
of
right
that
now
nature.
we're at the galvanizing stage where it's like people have virtually chosen a side. There are a few stragglers who are going, let's just say, I know we keep bringing it up as an example, but COVID, if you were to be able to see a crowd from an aerial view, and it was like one side was people that are awake and the other side is people that are still asleep. COVID really moved a giant percentage of people. And now I feel as though you're only going to see a couple of stragglers move from the left to the right. Rarely people go back in the other direction. But I think for the most part, people are going to be galvanized. But I do want to say, like, on my show on Timeline Cleanse, we do a lot of black content. I know we're getting late in the show, so I'll make this quick. But we do a lot of black content. And what I mean
you can
by
go
that
and do
is,
plugs. We can roll out of here if you want to, since it sounds like you're kind of doing anyways.
No, I mean, I just don't want to get into a whole tangent.
No, it's getting late anyway, so that'd be a good point. And yours sounded like a little bit of a plug, so I was like, make it a full-on plug. Fuck it.
Well, more or less. But on Timeline Cleanse, we do watch a lot of black content. What I mean by that is, like, it's like black people, it's black women, they're fighting one another, they're doing, we like to point out, sort of patterns that we notice, right, in these black combat situations. One of them, for example, is we call it the nigger loop, and that is where when they get into a fight, they'll say the same shit over and over again. For example, they'll be like, oh hell no, oh hell no, oh hell no, oh hell no, and they'll say it again and again and again and again, and it'll go on to like the umpteenth time, and you're like, oh, there's something about the wiring there. When they get into a combat situation, everything else goes on autopilot, and they get into the loop. Yes, endless chimp
Just
behavior.
lizard brains.
Exactly. What bitch? What bitch? What bitch? What bitch? Like over and over again. But what I want to say is that despite the gratuitous amount of black content that we get into, and the overwhelming feeling of fatigue that we experience on Timeline Cleanse on a regular basis, I recognize that there has been a long subversive machine that has done this to the black community. And you can make an argument that to a degree they do it to themselves, but that's kind of the best.
Yeah, I didn't realize, I wasn't even trying to lean into it with the chimp one that I did, but I realized I did the chimp after.
Yeah, bro.
You can insert two lions roaring at each other over whatever animal you want to. That's just the first one that came to mind.
It just came to my mind. I don't know what it is. You know, obviously, because somebody was talking about it in the chat. I'll just scroll up a little bit. They were talking about black conspiracies, and one of the things they mentioned was the crack epidemic. And it's like, they were, look, they have a history of slavery. They have a history of not being able to get mortgages. The banks redline them. They have nothing of value to pass on from one generation to another generation. Their music was co-opted, where at one point their art was a reflection of their life. Somebody saw it as a viable product and made it so that it became this mirror in the other direction. They took it and they said, what sells here? Violence sells. Womanizing sells. Drug use sells. Gang shit sells. That's what we want to push to this community. And they inevitably became a reflection of pretty much the one thing that they were exporting in America, which was their own culture in musical form. They were given the crack epidemic. So whoever was left that was a man, you know, either fell victim to the drug that's themselves, or they died from, you know, some sort of violence related to it, or they went to prison. And so you effectively remove the male figure from the household. We now know, looking at studies, that the number one indicator of whether or not a young man is going to end up in prison or dead at an early age is whether or not he had a father in the house. There's an endless amount of really large things. You have, what's her name? Margaret Sanger.
Oh God, bro.
Is this eugenicist? She doesn't, you know, she's not a big fan of the black people. And if you look at Planned Parenthood's number one customer, to this day, she's responsible for Planned Parenthood. It's black people. They're willingly committing their own genocide, and they're being coached by a propaganda machine that's feeding them culture to do these terrible things. So, I mean, I do like to add that caveat. It's like, that's a great example of the machines that we're fighting against. It's a nightmare. It really is. And on that note, before I do plugs, I just want to say that people that are in the chat, you know, you guys doing this show, us doing Nephilim Death Squad, we have to stop and appreciate just for a moment the fact that we are faced with possibly the greatest propaganda machine that has ever existed in the history of mankind, and we're going, nah, fuck you. Right. And I think that's pretty good, dude. That's pretty good, dude. Because the money that they've put into this machine, the generations of planning that they've put into this machine, you know, the world leaders that have steered this thing, for a couple of retards to sit here and go, no, I'm not buying it. Fuck you. I don't know. No, I don't think so. That's kind of wild. So, all right. I think I'll get into my plugs now. Guys, you can find me. Please do find me at David O. Corbo on Twitter. When I'm unbanned from there, I'll come hang out. You could also go to Nephilim Death Squad on YouTube and on Rumble, although we prefer Rumble because a lot of our episodes we've actually had to pull off of YouTube because of various things, mostly the Jews. And then if you are a Rumble user, you can look out for Timeline Cleanse, which happens practically every single fucking day. So I'll be there tomorrow morning at about 9:25 for Timeline Cleanse. And you can watch some black content with us and forget everything I said about the nuances and just have fun and get fatigued.
Hell yeah, brother. And yeah, I do think it's interesting that you bring up the point about kind of how we're standing in the way of this propaganda machine. But I think we're winning. I think overall, I think we will win, especially over the long haul. And yeah, I mean, shit, we have all these fucking retards all over the place, getting on big shows, spouting that shit. But yeah. Speaking of which, Austin, we need to get you on some fucking shows. You are one of the best people on dropping fucking knowledge, so I recommend people get you. Yeah, Raven, you need him have there on sometime to talk about literally any fucking child trafficking ring, and he'll probably be able to go for hours.
Your boy Grey Pilled as well. The both of you guys.
Yeah, hell yeah, dude.
Seeing you guys making the rounds and crushing.
Mm-hmm. I think you brought up Margaret Sanger in closing. I think it's kind of hilarious because that bitch was she was running the she had a project. It was called the Negro Project.
She didn't really get creative at all.
No, she didn't give a fuck, dude. And she said this in her own words in an article titled "A Better Race Through Birth Control." A better race through birth control.
Yep.
And she wrote, "Given birth control, the unfit will voluntarily eliminate their kind." So,
yeah, with a little bit of cultural manufacturing.
That's the paragon of Planned Parenthood. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing. But I really do think, man, like, honestly, as far as like I said a minute ago, inherently, like individualism, if you oppose individualism, you're elevating inherently the rights of any given group over the rights of the individual. And I just think that alone as a concept should be understood by more people, just on average, because it would lead to I think a much more peaceful and productive society in many ways. But anyway, I just think once you realize that it's at the expense of the individual and only results in the tyranny of the majority, the veil really does fall. And you no longer do fall into that trap, because you recognize the patterns, you see the playbook that they utilize. It won't affect you the same way this time. And that's my goal, is to just kind of get other people to really be more aware of exactly that principle alone, because that way, when the fog of war or the new version of propaganda is taking the official narrative for the day, and it's all you can see on every headline, that's when you remain skeptical, right? That's when we've worked hard to recondition ourselves to not fall into that trap. So that's all I'm going to say, because the point being, what you and Top are doing, like I said at the beginning, is so fucking valuable, brother. I think the open-mindedness alone is just, there's such an appetite for it, especially right now, because you have all of us. Like, the reason I started my podcast was because I said I felt so isolated, man. I felt like there was nobody like me in arm's reach that I could have a conversation with without feeling like I had to be so careful, or completely burn a bridge, or lose a relationship, right? Over something that, honestly, in the end, like, was it worth it? It depends, right? I mean, I don't know. But anyway, man, thank you for what you do, dude. And thank you for coming on the show. It really does mean a lot. And I was looking forward to having this conversation, man. So
thanks for having me, dude. It was
for sure,
it was
brother.
A lot of fun.
For sure, man. But anyway, besides that, you can you guys should all check out my most recent episode. It's called The Psychopath Machine. If you want to, I think the end of that is, like, toward the end of it, I get into this German occult organization called the Brotherhood. And yeah, it's been kind of like entirely discredited by mainstream media as being like a complete and total fabrication from out of the recesses of the dark imagination
It's
of Peter
100%
Woodcock.
programmed to kill vibes is what it's going on there.
That's what it, that's what it
It's
sounds
so
like.
crazy.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, check
it
that
out.
out.
It's a good episode.
Yeah, and follow me at the Underclass Podcast on pretty much all platforms, and support me on Buzzsprout and Patreon. Follow me at Underclass Pod on Twitter and at the Underclass Podcast on Instagram.
All right. Well, appreciate you coming on, Raven. If you guys want to support what I do, you can follow me on Twitter at TowerGangJose. You can I'm also on YouTube, all the major All Bucketers Rumble as well. If you want to do it with money, which I prefer, that'd be dope. Patreon.com, just No Way Jose 2020. Lowest level's $2. That gets you the early episodes. For my other stuff, usually it's like about a week or so. You get it early stuff. Also for this show, for the Already Dead show, you can pop on as a talking head like you saw earlier. But I do want to shout out my sponsors. I shout them out at the end of every episode. At the end of every episode, that's my highest patron level. My co-host Toad at Tower Gang. I also have at Abrogate D's at ZOVERACK at _Infinite Zeal. Jacob Daniel, the Biblical Anarchy podcast. Follow him on Twitter at Biblical Anarchy. The homie Tim Tuttle, my frequent edit maker, intro maker. Tim Tuttle at Jolly on Klebold. Then Will Bell, who has this delicious blueberry wine. Rabbit Eye, go get it online. But yeah, with that, guys, appreciate it when it came on. Ah, fuck, I just dropped my mouse. No, I'll have to do the fucking...
wine.
No, I actually haven't had anything in a while. I got like a giant case and then devoured it way too fucking
I just want to
quickly.
say I had that when we were in Georgia, and it is delicious.
It is really good. Oh, yeah. I legit got a whole case because he was like, yeah, this will be your sponsorship for a year. And I like... Within like a week, I drank all 12, I think.
You're helping out the show,
I have
and also
this...
give me alcoholism.
I'm the kind of alcoholic, or really just like a fatty too. Like when it comes to junk food, alcohol, drugs. No, like it's my thing is like if it's there.
Yeah.
Right.
Like so, like I won't go out and get it. But if it's there,
I'm the same way. I can't have it in the house. It's not in the house, but if I do have it in the house, I'll eat a whole jar of Nutella the same night I buy it.
Oh shit!
I'll just fucking spoon, just eating that shit.
No
alcohol, like it's the same thing. If I have like a 6-pack, it's like, I mean, I'm not one who drinks a ton, but I'll drink like 2 to 4 throughout the day or whatever. But I'll consistently do it, and it'll be gone like within a day.
You're talking
or
about
two.
bottles of blueberry wine.
Yeah, but with that, guys, we're out of here. Support all of us. Support what we're doing. Appreciate who came here. Next week, Tuesday, 9:30, be here again. The following week, we have Monica Perez joining us. But with that, we are out, faggots.